This is the issue, and I am the Ghetto Man. Today's issue, the seventh plank of the Communist Manifesto. The extension of factories and the instruments of production owned by the state, and the bringing into cultivation wastelands, and the improvement of the soil generally in accordance with a common plan. Don't go away. We'll be right back. The seventh plank of the Communist Manifesto, the extension of factories and the instruments of productions owned by the state, and the bringing into cultivation wasteland, and the improvement of the soil generally in accordance with a common plan. Every business in the United States is an extension of factories and the instruments of production owned by the state. We call them corporations, companies, sole proprietorship, that sort of thing. Corporations are creatures of the state. The state is their creator. The state is their partner. The state is their God. Corporations are nothing more than an extension of government power. Well, aren't corporations private businesses? Well, not quite. Let's see what the courts have said about the subject. Quote, "The corporation is a creature of the state. It is presumed to be incorporated for the benefit of the public. It receives certain special privileges and franchises and holds them subject to the laws of the state and the limitations of its charter. Its powers are limited by law. It can make no contract not authorized by its charter. Its rights to act as a corporation are only preserved to it so long as it obeys the laws of its creation. There is a reserved right in the legislator to investigate its contracts and find out whether it has exceeded its powers." That comes from a case called Hale versus Hinkle. It's a United States Supreme Court case, and it can be found in the United States Supreme Court Reports, Book 201, on page 43, and it's a 1906 case. And here's another one, quote, "The corporation is a creature of the state. It is presumed to be incorporated for the benefit of the public. It receives certain special privileges and franchise and holds them subject to the laws of the state and the limitation of its charters," unquote. And that comes from a Supreme Court case called Wilson versus the United States. And it can be found in the United States Supreme Court Reports, Book 221, on page 361. Corporations actually have a symbiotic relationship with government. Government has complete control over them by the way of their corporate charter. Government has the power to control every aspect of a corporation. Government can even break a corporation up if it gets too big or too powerful. Government can make or break a corporation. Communism calls for the extension of factories and the instruments of production to be owned by the state. Government regulation and control of corporate power answers that call. It is the same thing that government is doing with the corporate social media giants like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Google, using these corporations to selectively target, discriminate, deny, and suppress certain citizens of their right to freedom of speech. We saw this on C-SPAN, didn't we? When Congressman Piggly Quigley, a public servant, personally and arbitrarily, wanted an InfoWars article that was on Twitter's top trending story list. We're talking about an article that Congressman Piggly Quigley himself didn't like. He wanted Twitter to remove that article. He wanted Twitter to censor the article for him. See, and this is what we call censoring by government through corporate power. Okay, we got the government, Piggly Quigley, he's the one asking Twitter to remove the article, to censor InfoWars. And that's done through the corporation and the corporate power with Twitter. So, censored by government, Piggly Quigley, through corporate power, Twitter. And then we watch Twitter, a so-called private company apologetically informed Congressman Piggly Quigley that the story had in fact been removed. And so what we see is a corporation that was created by government just kissing the boots of its creator and its master, the government. Okay, I have the C-SPAN clip of that particular exchange between Twitter and Piggly Quigley in a show called American Fascism, Rise of Fascism in America. And I'll post a link to it in the comments section below. It's really worth watching. So as you can see, if the state can create, regulate, and control a corporation, in actual application, the state owns it. Even today, private businesses are licensed, regulated, and taxed. So what is a license anyway? Well, a license is a permission, a right given by some competent authority to do an act which without such authority would be illegal, a tort, or a trespass. And I got that definition out of Bouvier's Law Dictionary, which is the dictionaries that were sanctioned by Congress in 1839 as the official terms and definitions of the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. With that definition in mind, a license being permission to do that which is otherwise illegal, I ask you, is it illegal in a free country for a sovereign citizen to create a private business and earn a living without getting the consent of their servant government to do so? Do you think that any of our nation's founders had a business license to practice their trades? Today, agribusinesses like FMC Corporation, Monsanto, DuPont, and J.R. Simplot have replaced the family farmer in America. It is through these corporate agribusinesses that government is able to take control of all land use, forcing the family farmer to jump through so many corporate regulatory hoops that it forces them out of business. See, the federal government has brought in programs like the Desert Land Entry Act, bringing into cultivation the wastelands. There's also the soil conservation districts, which they've also established. And this has been done for the improvement of the soil generally in accordance with a common plan. What's interesting to note is that the Communist Manifesto was published in 1848. So is it just a coincidence that the Department of Agriculture was established in 1862, only 14 years after the Communist Manifesto was published? I'm just asking. Okay, next we have the Agriculture Adjustment Act of 1933. What this did is it made it possible for farmers to receive government aid. But there was a catch. They could only receive that aid if the farmer agreed to relinquish their property rights and give the government complete control over all of their farming activities. Now, in the former Soviet Union, we called this arrangement central planning and state farms, didn't we? Today, the federal government claims ownership and control of all public lands. It also claims that it can control the use of private land as well. Now, I'm sure you've heard of the horror stories where private landowners were fined thousands of Federal Reserve notes a day for using a pond or some wetlands on their property that somehow violated some EPA regulation. The federal government controls all of the public lands in America today. It allows the purchase, or should I say, it allows the purchase of the use of state land, but only if that land is used in accordance with a common plan, which includes, but not limited to, a permit to drill a well, a permit to draw the correct amount of water out of that well, a permit to grow what the state recommends that you grow. After all, it is the government's land, isn't it? What's interesting is that in some cities now, they have regulations that control what you can and cannot grow on your own private land, in your own private yard. Home vegetable gardens, growing your own food are banned in some cities now. Now, Karl Marx said, in a sense, the theory of the communist may be summed up in a single sentence: the abolition of private property. And that comes right out of the Communist Manifesto. So as you can see, in the United States today, we practice the seventh plank: the extension of factories and the instruments of production owned by the state, and the bringing in the cultivation of wastelands and the improvement of the soil generally, accordance with a common plan. Exactly the way the Communist Manifesto calls for. All I can say is, welcome to the land of the free and the home of the slave. I am the Ghetto Man. Thank you for watching. If you're politically correct, then you're legally wrong. And if you're not part of the solution, then you are the problem. Please subscribe to my channel and please share.